Hi, welcome to Alex's ESL World. Today's lesson is about action verbs and stative verbs. You know what action verbs are. Those are the verbs that talk about some kind of action happening. Verbs like walk, run, cook, and dance are all action verbs. You can do all of those things. Action verbs are also called dynamic verbs because dynamic means something moves. All verbs are either action or stative verbs. Stative verbs are also called verbs of being. They're about things that you can't watch someone do. They're different kinds of stative verbs. Come with me, I'll show you. This is a list of the different types of stative verbs. I'll go over each individually, but for now, take a look at the list. There are verbs of perception or opinion, the senses, emotion, possession, and states of being or quality. You can't really see someone doing any of those kinds of things. Let's take a look at the perception verbs first. They are know, believe, understand, recognize, prefer, agree and disagree, approve and disapprove, suppose, and suspect. Some examples using these kinds of stative verbs are, I've known my best friend for 20 years. The doctor believes it's a good idea to get a flu shot every year. Sam understood physics very well. And Judy didn't recognize her friend after she lost so much weight. That must have been a lot of weight. Can you see how these verbs are different from action verbs? Let's have a look at the next type of stative verbs. This is the verbs of the senses. These verbs talk about how we experience the world through our senses. Verbs such as hear, smell, see, feel, appear, seem, and resemble are stative verbs of the senses. For example, did you hear that sound? I love the smell of baking bread. I really do, don't you? Tom can see much better now that he has new glasses. And my son resembles me a lot. This is very true. My oldest child has always looked like me. The next type of stative verb is verbs of emotion, like love, hate, like, want, need, desire, and wish. Some examples are, I love chocolate. Anyone who knows me well knows that this is true. Next, Sarah wishes she could make more money. There are many people like Sarah in the world. Next one, Juan needs a new car. Maybe Juan is one of those people like Sarah who wishes he could make more money. Finally, Jennifer hates stormy weather. I don't think Jennifer is unique either. A lot of people don't like stormy weather. I'm okay with it if it's not dangerous and if it happens at night while I'm sleeping. The next type of stative verbs are the verbs of states or qualities. By states, I mean states of being. Verbs such as weigh, contain, consist, measure, cost, exist, depend, deserve, involve, and matter are states of being verbs. These verbs tell us something about a situation, but nothing about an action. Here's some example sentences. Black lives matter. This is a sentence we've heard quite a bit in the past couple of years. Of course, all lives matter, but there seem to be too many people who don't know that Black lives matter. I do hope the number of people who didn't know this before has become much smaller. The next example, how much does this dress cost? To cost is not an action. To buy is, but that's not our verb here. Another example is, all people deserve to be treated with respect. I won't try to convince you of this, but at least you must agree that most people deserve to be respected. I hope you agree. Finally, and without any more political suggestions, this bag of potatoes weighs 5 pounds. If you're not in the U.S., you might prefer to use kilos, but sorry, I don't really know kilos. The last type of stative verbs I'll talk to you about today is verbs of possession. These are verbs such as have, own, belong, possess, include, and owe. The examples are, Claire has beautiful hair. Does Harry have more than 2 watches? I don't really know why this would be important, but you never know. This cat belongs to Catherine. And finally, Magda included a map in her invitations. That was very thoughtful of Magda. It might surprise you, but there are some verbs that can be either stative or action verbs. These are verbs such as be, have, see, look, smell or taste, think or feel, and weigh or measure. Let's have a look at some examples. First, let's look at be. You know that this is our most irregular verb, and it's also used as an auxiliary verb with progressive tenses. Here, we're using it just as a verb to tell us something about someone or something. When be is a stative verb, we call it a linking verb because it links the subject to some information about that subject. For example, she is boring. This means she is always boring. It's just the way she is. When we use be as an action verb, the meaning is a little different. If we say, she is being boring, it means that she's boring right now, but she's not always boring. That's the action verb. It's something she's doing now, but she's not always doing that. The next one is have. In its stative use, we're talking about possession, like I have a car, or he has a dog. The action meaning of have is really used only in expressions. We have a lot of expressions that use have. For example, I'm having breakfast, which means that I'm eating breakfast. Or he's having fun, which means he's experiencing something fun. Now, don't confuse funny with fun. Funny means something is amusing. You laugh when something is funny. Fun is when something is enjoyable. You might laugh, but you might not. Some people think swimming is fun, but they don't laugh when they swim. Does that make sense? I hope so. The next verb that can be stative or action is see. When we use it as a stative verb, we mean that we perceive something with our eyes. We see, like, I see some butterflies. Or we understand something, like when we say, I see what you mean. When we use it as an action verb, we mean either when we're meeting with someone or when we're in a romantic relationship with someone. For example, I'm seeing my dentist tomorrow means that I have an appointment to go to the dentist's office tomorrow. It's not the most fun thing to do, but it's important. And if we say, they're seeing each other now, we're saying that 2 people we know are in a new relationship. Next, look. The stative meaning is about appearance. So we might say something like, those cookies look delicious. And that's usually the way cookies look, right? The action use of the verb look is about directing your eyes to something, or it could be used as a phrasal verb. We might say, Mohammed is looking at his watch. We're just saying what Mohammed is doing right now. Maybe he has a train to catch. He needs to know the time. So he looks at his watch. As a phrasal verb, we might say, he's looking for a job. Maybe that's why Mohammed is looking at his watch. He has a job interview. How about this one? Mina is looking after Sarah's baby. Mina is clearly Sarah's babysitter. So we can use looking after to talk about someone taking care of someone else. The next verb that can be stative or action, actually I'm putting 2 similar verbs together in this one. They're smell and taste. The stative meaning of smell and taste have to do with the quality of these senses. For example, the house smells of smoke, or the house smells like smoke, same thing. Or we could say, the tofu tastes delicious. Tofu can be very boring or very delicious. It depends on what you do with it. The action meaning for smell and taste has to do with using your senses to smell or taste something. For example, I smell dinner cooking on the stove. I love to cook and eat good food, so the smells in the kitchen give me a lot of pleasure. I might say to my husband, taste the soup and see what you think. Here I'm using the imperative form of the verb taste. In this case, you is the understood subject. For the next one, I'll discuss two similar verbs. They are think and feel. When we use these in their stative form, we're talking about when we give an opinion. Like I might say to you, I think you look great. I'm giving my opinion. Be careful of this one. You don't want the person you're complimenting to think that you look good to them because they care about you, but maybe other people will think you don't look so good. We can use feel in a similar way, like, I feel that we should study more. Can you see that in this sentence, feel means the same thing as think? When we use these verbs as action verbs, we're talking about using our minds, or we're experiencing emotions, or even health problems. I'll give you some examples. I could say, I'm thinking about returning to school. I've done that a few times. I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. Maybe. Or if I'm feeling kind of sick, I might say, I haven't been feeling well lately. The last one of these verbs that I can think of, actually the last two that are similar, are weigh and measure. The stative meaning is when we're talking about the size or weight of something. Like we can say, Joy's baby weighs 10 pounds. Sorry to those of you who aren't used to our imperial measuring system. It's the one I know. We could also say, the table measures 4 feet by 6 feet. It sounds like the table is measuring itself. That's just the way we say it. We, of course, do the measuring. The action meaning has to do with when someone is measuring or weighing. For instance, Simone is weighing her suitcase. Maybe Simone is going on a trip and she has a lot of things she wants to take, so she weighs her suitcase to be sure it's not over the maximum weight allowed by the airline. This is definitely an action verb. We might say, the tailor is measuring the man for a suit. The man wants a very well-fitted suit, so he goes to a tailor. When I think of the word tailor, I think of a professor I had in grad school who was from Spain. He told a story of the first sentence he learned in English. It was, my tailor is rich. He said it was the most useless sentence he could know. He never had a tailor, and he didn't think tailors were rich either. I really don't know. And that's the end of my lesson about stative and action verbs. I'm a little late this week getting the lesson out to you because I spent a lot of time working on a 24-page list of 795 English verbs. There's a story behind that list. A few years ago, a student who was a Spanish speaker showed me a list that she had from a previous teacher. It had around 500 verbs, but it was clearly a copy of a copy of a copy. I made yet another copy for myself and took on a project. I used to be a typist, so I don't mind typing at all, and I can go pretty fast. So I started retyping one page at a time. There were 15 pages. When I finished one page, I took it to school, made fresh copies, and gave them out to students. We would go over verbs for pronunciation and meaning. I kept working on it until I finished the whole thing. I've given this list out to many students over the years. Then, about a year ago, I got to thinking, I should make sure that the most used 500 English verbs were on that list. I did some research, and I found the most common 500 English verbs, and I went through my list to be sure they were all there. They weren't, so I added them. That list had columns for the infinitive, the verb with to. Also, there was a column for translations, and they were in Spanish. So I made a version of the list with blanks so people could add their own languages, people who didn't speak Spanish. They could add their own language translations. There were columns for the progressive or continuous verbs and past tense verbs, past participles, and there were some other things. I decided to make some changes to the columns and add more information that I thought would be useful. What I've ended up with is 795 verbs that show if they're regular or irregular, stative or action, and transitive or intransitive. I'm planning to cover transitive and intransitive in my next video, but I'm going to go ahead and put the list up on my website now. You're welcome to download it or print it, save it to your computer, whatever you want to do. Right now the list is free, but I'm thinking about charging a small fee in the future. So far, everything I've put up has been free. I make no promise about the future, but for now, I'm keeping everything free for students. That's the way I'd really like to keep it. And that's it for now. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget to be kind to each other. It's so important. Bye now.